Sir, this porch isn't yours anymore." That's what she said, while standing on it, in heels, with glitter on her cheekbones and a clipboard like it was a weapon. Now, I've lived through a wildfire, a mountain lion encounter, and 42 years of marriage, but nothing prepared me for Savannah Lockridge in leopard print leggings, trying to evict me from the very deck I'd built with my father in 1974. "We're modernizing Timber Glen," she chirped. "And your little cabin, it's holding us back." I took a sip of my coffee, which suddenly tasted like betrayal. "And HOA fees. But don't worry, keep watching. The final comeback, it'll make you tip your hat so hard it spins. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from, especially if you've ever tangled with a clipboard queen, because this story, it's about how a 40-year-old infrastructure consultant peacefully editing college textbooks ended up in a full-blown war with a rhinestone-wrapped HOA president who thought my cabin was in her way. Spoiler alert, it wasn't the cabin that needed moving. I'm Thomas Beckett, widower, retired infrastructure consultant, proud owner of a 113-year-old log cabin that my grandfather built with nothing but a hammer, a mule, and dreams too heavy to carry anywhere else. This place isn't fancy. It creaks when it's cold, leaks when it rains, and smells like cedar, pipe tobacco, and thyme, but it's mine. So when Savannah offered 3 times the appraised value just to ease me out, for the sake of the community aesthetic, I didn't say no to the money. I said no to the insult. Because when someone tries to buy your soul at market rate, it's not a negotiation, it's a warning shot. She smiled like someone who'd never been told no without a lawyer involved. "I'm giving you a gracious exit, Mr. Beckett," she said. "Take it or things get administrative." That's when I knew. This wasn't about my flower beds or the way my chimney leans left in the wind. This was about control. The HOA wanted a clean map, and I was the coffee stain they couldn't scrub out. But what Savannah didn't know was that I've been documenting stormwater systems longer than she's been contouring her face. And if she wanted a boundary war, she'd just declared it on a Beckett with all the original deeds. I walked inside, pulled out the dusty leather file labeled Beckett Estate 1911, and flipped through survey maps drawn by hand, inked in the margins by my grandfather's own pen, tax records, exemption letters, boundary disputes already won 3 generations ago. Savannah thought she'd found a weak link. What she'd actually found was a steel chain wrapped in family history and anchored to bedrock, and I hadn't even started sharpening my pencils yet. The next morning I heard it. The hum of machines, the crunch of tires, and the thud of arrogance breaking ground. Savannah's pool crew was digging, and they'd crossed the line. Not just legally, but spiritually. 2 feet into Beckett's soil, I stood on the porch, barefoot, coffee in hand, and watched them like a man watches a slow train wreck he already reported to the sheriff. I didn't yell. I didn't warn. I just smiled. The kind of smile my wife used to call quiet thunder. Because when a glittered queen invades the wrong kingdom, she doesn't just lose the battle. She learns who wrote the map. They said it was about aesthetics, but let me tell you, when someone shows up on your porch in platform wedges holding a laminated clipboard and slaps a $600 0-cent citation on your screen door for having non-regulation flower pots, that's not community management, that's warfare with a glitter topcoat. Savannah Lockridge didn't just dislike my cabin, she wanted it gone, like it was a typo in her suburban fairy tale. First came the parties. Pool parties so loud my coffee started frothing itself. Then came the flyers. Mandatory Timber Glen harmony enhancements. Sounds harmless, right? You'd think it was a community bake sale, but no. What followed was more restrictive than a federal penitentiary dress code, and about as neighborly as a tax audit on Christmas Eve. By week 2, I had received 6 citations, not 1, 6. My offense? Porch clutter, otherwise known as a rocking chair and a chipped mug that once held my wife's morning tea. Unsanctioned greenery, because apparently wildflowers aren't HOA approved unless they match the Lockridge Estate's color palette. She even sent me a formal warning, typed, no less, about the wind chimes Emily bought from a Navajo artisan 30 years ago. Disruptive metallic vibrations. I read that line twice to make sure I hadn't suffered a stroke. When I asked the so-called compliance officer what lawn inconsistency meant, he told me my grass grew in the wrong direction. I looked at him, looked at the sun, and said, "Well, I guess we better sue the Earth's axis then." Now, I'm not a lawyer, but I am an engineer. I believe in measurements, data, documentation. So I began cataloging the harassment with the dedication of a man building a case, because that's exactly what I was doing. I downloaded a decibel meter app. Friday through Sunday, her backyard speakers blasted music at 93 decibels. That's louder than a lawnmower and almost as annoying. I took time-stamped photos of the HOA notices, showing they arrived before the supposed violations even occurred. I filed every complaint. You know what the sheriff said when I showed him the folder? "Mr. Beckett, maybe it's time you consider downsizing. Some communities have expectations." That's when I found out Savannah's his cousin. Small towns, they don't need fences when nepotism already keeps folks in line. Still, I kept my tone polite, my files thick, and my head high. I drank my morning coffee quietly, until she banned coffee before 7 a.m., citing aromatic interference with wellness routines. That's when I stopped hoping she'd go away and started planning for the long game. Because this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a siege. She was wearing me down like a dripping faucet on a stone floor, and she thought, eventually I'd give in, sell out, move along. But that's the thing about old cabins. They creak, they groan, they shift with the seasons. But they don't fall because someone in rhinestones thinks they're inconvenient. Then came the moment that changed everything. I opened my grandfather's deed binder, the one labeled Beckett Estate 1911. Inside were hand-drawn boundary maps, soil reports, and a notarized property survey from before the Titanic ever set sail. And right there, in black and white ink older than the HOA's bylaws by nearly a century, I saw it. A parcel boundary line, jagged and firm, cutting through what is now Savannah's infinity pool like a sword, that shimmering lagoon of excess. 40% of it sat on my land, not close, not bordering on it, like a rhinestone raccoon squatting in your bird bath. I walked outside and stood by my pine trees, the same ones my grandfather planted when Woodrow Wilson was president, and watched a construction crew install new LED lighting beside the pool. One of the workers waved. I waved back. Not because I was neighborly, but because sometimes the best way to stop a train is to step off the tracks and let it derail itself. I pulled out my leather-bound notebook, the one Emily gave me on our 20th anniversary, flipped to a fresh page, and wrote in pencil, Day 1. Because this wasn't just about a fence or a flower pot anymore. This was a land war dressed in garden decor, and I had just discovered my secret weapon. Stay with me, because what happens next? It's when Savannah's empire starts to crack, and I don't even lift a finger. I just measure, record, and let gravity and justice do the rest. You can't poison the well without the whole town tasting it. That's what my grandfather used to say, usually while fixing a leaky pipe or telling a story about some shady contractor from the 1950s. I always thought it was a metaphor. Turns out, in Tinbergen, it was literal. Because the first time I noticed something off about the creek, it wasn't some grand epiphany. It was the fish dead. 3 of them belly up in the shallows behind my cabin, right where Emily used to sit and read. At first, I thought it was the weather. But weather doesn't make water smell like bleach. That's when I started quietly collecting samples. Every morning, like I was refilling a thermos. Only this time, it wasn't coffee. It was evidence. I didn't tell anyone at first. After all, I was already the HOA's favorite villain, and I wasn't trying to win any popularity contests. But when little Sophie Ramirez, 8 years old and allergic to everything but kindness, ended up with a full-body rash after splashing in the same creek, it stopped being my problem. Her mom knocked on my door holding a Ziploc bag of water and a trembling voice. "Mr. Beckett, do you think this has anything to do with that pool construction?" I didn't answer right away. I didn't need to. The truth was soaking into everyone now, one lawn at a time. Then came Rico. Rico Flores used to be the Lockridge's contractor, until he got fired for asking too many questions about waste management. He showed up on my porch in muddy boots and a baseball cap pulled so low I couldn't see his eyes. "I shouldn't be here," he said, "but you need to see this." What he had wasn't gossip, it was gospel. Photos, dozens, construction day shots showing unmarked drums, rusted, orange, hazardous-looking, being lowered into a pit right beneath Savannah's Roman temple of a pool. The kicker? The barrels weren't labeled, but the way they were buried, covered in gravel like bad secrets under concrete, told me all I needed to know. Timberglen's most luxurious backyard was sitting on a ticking chemical time bomb. Now, if you've never heard Savannah Lockridge give a speech, let me save you the trouble. It's like watching a late-night infomercial about leadership skills, hosted by a pageant queen with subpoena energy. The next HOA meeting, she stood under a gazebo wearing rhinestones and righteousness, declaring that the future of Timberglen depended on removing elements of resistance to progress. I almost laughed. It was less a meeting and more a Fellaini teaser trailer. Especially when she talked about securing the water table for optimal lifestyle experiences. Translation? Cover the pollution with concrete and blame the smell on the cabin. But the town wasn't as asleep as she thought. Within a week, 3 separate neighbors showed up at my door. First came Tom and Rita Hughes, armed with binders full of phony fines, each stamped with "Final Notice" in fonts aggressive enough to file their own restraining orders. Then came Nancy Lee, who'd been getting anonymous letters taped to her garage door, "Sell now or suffer consequences." And then there was Marcus Chen, our neighborhood's unofficial historian, who whispered like he was in a spy movie, "They're editing meeting minutes after the fact. I checked the timestamps." It wasn't paranoia anymore. It was a pattern. That's when I realized this wasn't just me, it was us. Timberglen wasn't a neighborhood. It was a hostage situation with landscaping, and the people were done being polite. We didn't have a militia, but we had clipboards, flashlights, and years of pent-up HOA trauma. The resistance had no uniforms, just folks in gardening gloves, sipping lukewarm coffee and comparing legal documents. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something strange brewing in this battle. Momentum. Naturally, Savannah didn't like that. And bullies with money don't sue first, they set traps. Mine came on a Tuesday morning at 6:42. I'd gone down to the creek to collect another water sample, same as always, but this time I wasn't alone. 2 deputies stepped out from behind the oak trees like they were filming a low bunch of Western. "Mr. Beckett," one of them said, "we've got a complaint of trespassing." I looked down at my boots. On my land, holding a vial with my deed in my back pocket. "Funny kind of trespass," I said, "but funny don't stop handcuffs." They took me in, charged me, said I was interfering with HOA property rights. It was laughable, until it wasn't. I spent 9 hours in a holding cell while Savannah's version of the truth spread through the neighborhood like fertilizer runoff. "Thomas arrested," screamed the HOA newsletter headline. "Unsafe behavior near water supply." They even posted a blurry photo of me crouched near the stream, like I was sabotaging the aquifer instead of saving it. It was character assassination by brochure. But here's the thing about wells. Poison them long enough, and even the fence sitters start to get thirsty. Because while Savannah thought she'd won the war by locking me up for a day, she forgot the rule every chess player knows. The game doesn't end when you take a pawn. It ends when the queen overreaches. And next, she was about to lose the whole board. There's something about the cold floor of a county jail cell that clears the mind better than meditation or bourbon. Maybe it's the way the cinder blocks echo every thought back at you, or maybe it's because you finally stopped trying to explain yourself to people who've already made up their minds. I sat there, knees drawn, elbows on thighs, staring at my hands like they were supposed to pull a miracle out of thin air. They didn't. But what they did hold, still, was a promise. One I made to Emily before she passed. She'd taken my hand, thin as paper by then, and said, "This land is our soul, Thomas. Don't let anyone rip it up like a weed." I didn't realize how deep that root ran until I was staring at 4 gray walls and hearing her voice louder than ever. When the metal door finally swung open, it wasn't a cop. It was Péton, my lawyer, old college buddy, and the last man in Timberglen, still wearing leather-soled shoes like it's 1995. He looked like hell warmed over and reheated in a microwave. "Get up," he said, not unkindly. "You're not going to believe what I found." On the ride back, he explained what the EPA lab confirmed from my sample: chlorine, bromine, and enough chemical runoff to make the local pond glow in the dark. Not just contamination, violations. Federal ones. "Thomas, it's bad," he muttered, flipping through the report like it might change if he read it faster. "This isn't about a backyard pool anymore, it's an environmental crime scene." But that wasn't even the real headline. Rico had called while I was in holding. He was ready to blow the lid off everything. Photos, timestamps, signed job orders, even audio clips from construction meetings where Savannah and her contractor laughed about hiding the spicy barrels. He wanted protection, federal whistleblower status. And Péton knew just the guy to file the paperwork. "He's risking everything," Péton said. "But so are you. You still in?" I didn't even blink. I was in the day she tried to repaint history over my great-grandfather's survey lines. Of course, Savannah didn't waste time. While I was locked up, she launched what I can only describe as a smear campaign with the production value of a Super Bowl ad and the ethics of a loan shark in a church pew. Someone leaked camera footage of me collecting samples, spliced, overdubbed, and framed like I was some kind of domestic water terrorist. "Unstable homeowner threatens public resources." The video had dramatic music, red filters, and slow-mo meshing close-ups of my face like I was the villain in a Netflix docuseries. It spread fast. Faster than facts, naturally. Facebook, next door, even one of those HOA forums where people argue about mailbox heights and flag colors. I got messages. Nasty ones. "You're a danger. We don't want your kind here. Leave before you poison us all." But what Savannah didn't know was this. I keep receipts. The real ones. The kind printed on watermarked paper, notarized, time-stamped, GPS tagged, and backed by federal testing. I watched the video 3 times, and every time I just smiled. "They edited me like a villain," I told Péton, but forgot I backed up my hard drive. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg for understanding. I was going to let the truth do what chemicals couldn't. Purify the mess. So we hit back. Quietly, thoroughly, legally. Péton and I filed an emergency federal lawsuit, 102 pages of proof, 7 named witnesses, lab data, Rico's entire whistleblower package, and an annexed section called Documented Pattern of HOA Harassment. We submitted it before sunrise. By noon, I had a case number. By dinner, we had confirmation it had been escalated due to potential widespread environmental impact. That night, I sat on my porch, the one Savannah said ruined the aesthetic of her kingdom, and I poured a glass of bourbon in Emily's chipped mug. Not to celebrate, but to steady myself, because now we weren't just fighting back, we were turning on the lights. And stay close, because next, the lights shine where Savannah's glitter doesn't reach. And what it reveals? Let's just say she picked the wrong old man to push. You ever see a woman in designer heels try to outrun a federal warrant while holding a wine spritzer? That was Savannah Lockridge on the Tuesday morning her empire crumbled. Not metaphorically, literally. The Lockridge estate shook harder than a squirrel on espresso the second the EPA, FBI, and IRS rolled in like it was Christmas, and they all brought subpoenas, unmarked trucks, camera crews. One guy even had a badge clipped to his backpack like it was a high school hall pass. And me? I was sitting on my porch with Emily's old chipped mug, sipping black coffee and watching it all like the world's most satisfying morning show. "Environmental Rico," said the lead agent with a voice like gravel and a badge that gleamed like karma. "Turns out burying toxic barrels under a luxury pool and financing the whole operation with HOA fines funneled into your personal bank account gets you more than a slap on the wrist. It gets you federal time. One agent held up a glowing soil sample like he'd just unearthed Chernobyl light. "You're lucky this didn't hit the aquifer," he muttered. I nodded, though inside I wanted to scream. It had hit the aquifer. I had the samples, the rash on the neighbor kid, the report that made even Patton, who once worked in asbestos litigation, go pale. And the pool? That shimmering backyard monstrosity that Savannah wrote about in every HOA newsletter, like it was the eighth wonder of the world? Turns out 40% of it sat squarely on my deeded land. Which meant every time she did a backstroke, she trespassed. The surveyor marked the true boundary with little orange flags, and when he announced the results out loud, on camera, Savannah went so white she nearly disappeared into the stucco wall behind her. "This is sabotage!" she shrieked, wine sloshing like justice in a stemless glass. But no one was listening, because the only thing louder than her denial was the sound of agents pulling evidence from beneath her designer deck boards. The HOA board? They folded faster than a $3.00 lawn chair in a windstorm. One by one they cracked. First it was Tilda, the treasurer with the purse full of receipts and regrets. Then came Graham, who apparently thought kickback was just another word for neighborhood bonus. They confessed to forged citations, shell contracts, secret beautification payments, and even a slush fund called community enrichment. I handed over the receipts, the videos, the violation log that I'd been keeping since the day Savannah stepped on my porch in rhinestones and arrogance. Peyton walked the evidence straight into the DOJ's white-collar crimes division like he was delivering a flaming cake to the devil himself. By noon, the story hit the local news. By 2 p.m., it was trending. Luxury HOA caught in federal sting, toxic pool, fraudulent fines, FBI raid. The phone on my porch rang like it was 1989 again. Reporters, lawyers, former residents from across the state who'd been pushed out of their homes by the same HOA machine. They sent letters, photos. One woman even mailed me her wedding album, said Savannah fined her $1,200, 0 cents, because her dress color clashed with the lawn. Turns out when you shine a light under a rock, the whole garden comes to life. And right around dusk, Savannah showed up. No more glitter, no more practiced smiles. Just a woman unraveling at the seams, makeup sliding off like her reputation. "Thomas," she said, voice dipped in fake honey, "this got out of hand." She handed me a thick envelope. Inside, a settlement offer, more zeros than cents, along with a non-disclosure clause thick enough to suffocate truth. "Let's end this quietly," she whispered. "No more media, no more drama." I looked at her, then at the potted fern beside my porch swing, the one with a federal-grade mic tucked beneath the soil. I pressed record. Quiet's never been my style. And oh, it gets better, 'cause the moment I handed that recording to the agents on scene, Savannah knew. She didn't just lose the case, she lost the narrative. Her own words, on tape, offering hush money, admitting guilt. "Just say the survey was wrong," she'd whispered. "We'll make it worth your while." You ever watch someone's eyes try to rewrite time in real time? She looked like a cat caught in a leaf blower. The next morning they issued additional charges. Obstruction, witness tampering, attempted bribery of a federal witness. Her lawyer called it a misunderstanding. The rest of us called it karma arriving with a soundtrack. The same neighbors who once gave me the side eye at the grocery store now showed up on my porch with casseroles and questions. "We're sorry," one of them said. "We didn't know," and maybe they didn't. But they knew now, because if you're going to build a pool on someone else's land, you better be ready to swim in consequences. By the end of the week, Savannah's mansion had more law enforcement tape than a true crime documentary. The EPA parked a mobile lab on her lawn, the IRS agents boxed up her office like it was moving day, and the local sheriff, the one who once ignored my complaints because he was her cousin? Yeah, he suddenly remembered how to write a report. And just as I was thinking this couldn't get any sweeter, Rico, the former contractor, showed up on my porch with 2 cups of coffee and a federal badge around his neck. Turns out he'd joined the Environmental Crimes Unit. "You ready for the trial?" he asked. I smiled. "I've been ready since day one." But that night, as the sun set over Timberglen and the last of the agents packed up their hazmat suits and redacted paperwork, I sat on my porch and stared at the outline of Savannah's ruined kingdom. The empty deck, the drained pool, the silence. And I realized something. This wasn't just about dirt and deeds. This was about dignity, about standing your ground when the world tells you to sit down, about knowing that when they try to poison your water, literal or otherwise, you don't just filter it, you boil it, document it, and hand it to the people who make laws for a living. So stay close, because next, the gavel drops, and Savannah's final act, it's the one no HOA president wants to star in. There's a certain kind of peace that comes from saying no with your whole chest, especially when the offer smells like panic and desperation dressed up in zeros. Savannah's lawyer offered me 7 times the market value for my land. 7. I looked at that number like it was a mirage in the desert, then looked out at the pines Emily loved, the porch we built with our own hands, and I smiled. "You can't buy history," I said, "and you sure as hell can't buy me." That land wasn't just soil. It was her laughter in the breeze, my grandfather's hammer marks in the joists, and every Beckett memory from the last century. Selling would have meant surrender, and I didn't walk through fire just to lay down at the finish line. Savannah was arrested that same week. Obstruction of justice, toxic dumping, wire fraud, and enough environmental crimes to make her the poster child of EPA PowerPoint presentations for the next 10 years. They perp-walked her out in heels, too high for humility, and those giant sunglasses she used to wear like armor, only this time she wasn't shielding from sunlight, she was hiding from truth. The pool, demolished. EPA contractors tore it up piece by piece, unearthing barrels that looked more like war relics than construction waste. The soil had to be excavated 12 feet down, hauled out in sealed trucks, and treated like the biohazard it was. And just like that, the jewel of Timberglen became the shame of Pine County. I watched from my porch every morning as the machines did their work, coffee in hand, notebook on my lap. One day, Rico, now officially a federal whistleblower with a clean conscience and a better haircut, walked up to me and said, "You ever think about what you'll do when this is over?" I nodded. "Yeah," I said, "I'm going to build something better." And that's exactly what I proposed. I took the map of Savannah's former estate, overlaid it with the deed line from 1911, and filed a request with the county to turn the contaminated parcel into something that would actually give back. The Emily Beckett Memorial Environmental Center. A place for education, healing, and remembering that legacy isn't measured in square footage, it's measured in service. The proposal passed unanimously. Funny how fast people get on board when the truth's been televised, notarized, and federally verified. The new center would feature native gardens, soil and water education programs, a playground made from recycled materials, and a trail system that winds through what used to be the Lock Ridge luxury lawn. I donated the land under one condition, that no HOA could ever touch it. No fees, no fines, just freedom. And peace. Savannah's name? Scrubbed from every record. Her mugshot? Public. Her mansion? Gone. In its place, children laughing where greed once echoed, and clean water running again through the creek Emily and I used to walk along every fall. I gave the opening speech myself. Wore my best flannel and Emily's necklace tucked beneath my shirt. The crowd was bigger than I expected. Neighbors, officials, even the judge who signed the final ruling. "They buried poison in the soil," I said, but I planted something stronger. The plaque outside the center reads, "For Emily, who believed in gardens, truth, and never backing down from a fight that mattered. When I finished speaking, the wind picked up, rustling through the pines like applause from the past. And just for a second, I swear I heard her laugh. These days, my porch is quiet again, but it's not lonely. The air smells clean, the birds returned, and the fence line is exactly where my grandfather drew it over 100 years ago. I still keep the deed file in my desk, still drink from the chipped mug, still write in the same notebook that started it all. But now, when people ask what I do, I don't say retired or widower. I say caretaker of land, of legacy, of the truth that no one can bulldoze, no matter how many fines they try to slap on it. Justice doesn't always come in a robe. Sometimes it shows up with a notebook, a smile, and a boundary survey from 1911. And maybe that's the real win here. Not that Savannah got arrested, not that the EPA showed up like the Avengers with hazmat suits, not even that her pool was turned into compost and memory mulch. No, the win is quieter than that. It's the sound of a little girl learning about clean water in the center named after my wife. It's the old man sipping coffee in peace, not paranoia. It's a neighborhood that finally started talking to each other instead of tattling through anonymous. If this story reminded you of anything, of home, of justice, of what it means to hold the line when everything around you tries to push it, then maybe take a second and let us know in the comments. Because someone out there is still fighting their version of Tim Berglund, and trust me, they could use a reminder that they're not alone. So hit that like button if you believe land can hold memory, if you believe truth still echoes louder than threats, and if you believe the quiet ones can still win the loudest battles. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, true feeling tales with a twist, some tension, and a whole lot of poetic justice. Because next week, we're going to a neighborhood where the HOA tried to charge a man for planting a tree and ended up facing a lawsuit from the U.S. Forestry Service. I'm not kidding. Remember, they buried poison, but we planted legacy, and that's how you outlive a mansion, with roots. See you in the next story.